Just a quick disclaimer, my voice slowly dies throughout this video. It just gets drier and drier. I'm currently a little bit sick. Hopefully next video won't be as bad, but for now, you might have to put up with some croaky voice. Enjoy! Hey, Fizzy here. So a lot of people in the last tutorial video wanted to know how to make tiny tanks. So I thought that I would enlighten you guys on how to do exactly that. So in this video, you're going to learn how to build 3 different hull internals, and you're also going to learn how to build 4 different autoloaders. Let's start off by taking a look at possibly the easiest one, which is basically just the hull internals from the last tutorial, but this time we have basically no armor around it. So yeah, there's not much to say about this one. If you want to know more about this transmission, I recommend that you watch the previous tutorial, where we go over the basics of Create and Tank Tussle in general. So even though the hull internals are basically the same as last video's tank, the turret is very, very different. So this is where most of the compacting comes into play. Now, this is the internals for the turret that I usually use, but this has been broken as of late. So real quick, I'm just going to go through how you would put this together. I won't spend too much time on it though, since it is currently sort of useless, as it is broken. Uh, you would just put together your medium cannon the way that you usually do. Not too long though, because if it's too long, then it's going to look a little strange on your smaller tank. So we're going to place our energy transmitter where we'd usually place our lever for the assembly, and we'll place the lever underneath the energy transmitter, so when we turn it on, it will hard power the energy transmitter and then assemble the cannon that way. This will be our power for the mechanical arm, so we're going to bring our adjustable chain gear shift out of there, and we're going to bring our chain cogwheel out of the side. They are twisted, but this is okay because Create works in a way that any sort of chain block will always connect to chain blocks next to it in a row, even if they are twisted up a bit. This way we can put our mechanical arm right here and it will be powered correctly. If you don't want your mechanical arm to be poking out the top of your tank, you can actually place it by placing it on the bottom of the block, and then it will be upside down, so then your tank won't look sort of funky when you're assembling it. There won't be any mechanical arms popping out of the top. We're going to put our depot here, which will not be affected by the hard-powered energy transmitter. If we were to put our hopper here and then our depot here, then the hopper would be affected. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure the hopper is on the outside. And then we finally want to grab our smart chute, and we want to put that right here where it can't be affected by any redstone interference. And finally, we want to put our energy transmitter inside the breech of the cannon, which is then facing into the compact cannon mount, and we can set that so it is our pitch for the cannon mount. What you'd usually do now is just place down your redstone link here for the firing of the cannon, except we're not actually going to do that. Instead, we're placing a copycat block and a redstone link below it, and then that link will be hard powering that block, which will make the cannon fire. The reason for this is because we want this to be as compact as possible, so this way we can actually just have our layer of armor. If we were to do it the other way, you can see that the armor would have to be a full block backward, and we don't want that, so we're going to do it like this, so it can be extra small. Let's also just quickly make sure that our arm is connected up to everything correctly, make sure that it is depositing into the smart chute, taking from the depot and depositing into the cannon mount, and then you can place it on the bottom of your block so it's upside down, and there you go, that's your autoloader done. Or it would be if this autoloader still worked, so unfortunately it doesn't. Fortunately though, you can build basically the same thing but with a big cannon instead. The only difference here really is that there's a hopper and a depot at the back, so we would replace these blocks with the depot and the hopper. Yeah. And what we'd have is this hopper here with big cartridges in it, and we'd have this hopper here with our shots. The real deal breaker here is, of course, the big cannon. This thing is huge compared to the medium cannon, which makes things a little bit difficult. So you may have noticed this funky little autoloader up the back here. This is the alternate medium cannon autoloader, which actually works in the current state of the mod pack because it uses a large cannon mount, the usual cannon mount that comes with default Create Big Cannons. So since it's using that big cannon mount, the medium cannon can be properly auto-loaded. So in order to build this thing to begin with, we need our big cannon mount here. We have an energy transmitter facing upwards to the left, and to the right we have one that is facing right into the mount, which will be our pitch. So let's set those. To power our arm, we are going to put our adjustable chain gear shift over here and our encased cogwheel here, and then we'll have our mechanical arm to the side, and then we can grab our smart chute and have it on top of the arm. Something you need to know about the smart chute is if it's on top of a block, it won't be able to dispose of its items, but if it's on top of nothing, then it will be able to dispose of its items. So this smart chute is currently being blocked by this grass block. This smart chute, however, is different because the mechanical arm is not a full block, so it can actually dispose of its items if there is a non-full block beneath it, such as a mechanical arm, meaning this still works. We're going to place our depot here and our hopper here, and then we're going to have a lever here to power the adjustable chain gearshift, a lever here to assemble the cannon, and we're going to have a redstone link on the back in order to fire the cannon. So I probably should have done this when I started building this, but I've broken 2 blocks here just so I can start to put the cannon together. So you put this together just like you would any other medium cannon, except it's facing upwards, so make sure that you're looking upwards when you're placing your breech, and looking downwards when you're placing all of your barrel blocks. Now we can assemble it, and another thing to note when assembling this is that you need to make sure that your cannon mount is facing east and west, not north and south, because if it's facing north and south, the cannon will assemble a little bit strangely, as you can see here. That's not right. Now I will quickly replace what I broke, and we're also going to make sure that our mechanical arm is connected to everything properly, just like so. So how exactly would you get these autoloaders onto a tank, especially this funky one, which is facing upwards, which really isn't ideal for getting it onto a horizontal facing hull? Well, for the first 2 that we looked at, I am going to show you how to put those onto our tank right now. We're going to, first off, skim up our tank. Never just assemble a hull that you've built. Never just assemble anything that you've built. You always want to make a schematic of it and assemble the schematic. This is just for safety reasons, you know. Now I'm going to grab my block of choice, which I'm using a yellow balloon again, and my ship helm, which I'm going to shift right click and assemble it. And then we can put our schematic on top and print it. Break that block there. Remembering that in order to get our turret on correctly, we need to first position the physics bearing. So we're going to right click the top of it to rotate it this way, and then right click the side in order to get it facing upwards. We're going to put our temporary block on top, and then we're going to right click the bearing in order to assemble. In order to get this turret on, we're going to skim this up. Now to place our schematic, we're going to put it on our temporary block on our assembled turret. Now I've had a lot of comments from the last video asking about this. This is really important to remember. If you are positioning your turret, you do not right click any of the blocks that are part of the hull. So as you can see, if I right click here, or here, or here, anywhere on the hull object, that means that the turret is going to assemble as part of the hull, not part of the turret. So right now, this yellow balloon block is the only part of the turret that is assembled and actually exists in the world. So this yellow block here is a completely separate ship from the hull. It is only held to the hull with that physics bearing. So if you're repositioning your internals, reposition them either onto the yellow balloon, or if you want to change the X or Z values of your internals, then you build out from that yellow balloon with other temporary blocks, and we can reposition on any of these because they are all part of the turret right now, because we built them out from that original temporary block. This doesn't work from the hull, of course. If I were to build out using our temporary blocks from the hull, this still counts as being part of the hull. You're not building onto the turret. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I've had quite a few people in the comments saying that their turret's not moving, and when we get to the bottom of the issue, it's always the fact that they've accidentally repositioned their internals onto the hull. Now, I've made another silly mistake, which I should have talked about in the beginning of the turret section. If you watched the last video, you should know exactly what I've done wrong here. Never build your turrets facing anywhere except south. Always build your turrets facing south, because this will happen. So as you can see, the links and the lever on the bottom of the turret internals are actually phasing into the hull. This is perfectly fine, as they have no Valkyrian Skies collisions. So yeah, in that state, the tank would have worked fine, except for the fact that the autoloader would not have worked, which is why I've gotten rid of that autoloader, because it does not work at the moment. Instead, I'm going to grab this autoloader, which should work perfectly. So I'm going to skim it up just like usual, and I'm going to name it Autoloader. And we're going to load it immediately. And I'm going to do something a little different. So I'm going to grab another rogue ship helm and another yellow balloon and assemble another ship. And I'm going to put my autoloader on that separate ship. As you can see, it is now a separate object. And in order to get that on this tank, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some slabs. And I'm just going to do a little bit of building. And in order to get this over in there, I'm just going to lift it up. And come on, you can do it. Voila. So yeah, as you can also see, this is actually smaller than the other method over there, as the back is now slabs. So in order to secure this in place, I am going to put some slabs on top, just like so. And there we go. The turret of the tank is now complete, and it should be fully functional if we were to get the engine up and running. And for the first time in this tutorial series history, the autoloader is completely functional. This little guy is great and all, however, there is, of course, one problem, and that is he's a little bit ugly, so we're going to fix that up right away. We can replace these slabs with some layers here. We can make it so it's got a bit of a round shape, sort of like a Russian MBT. Make that a little bit taller at the back there, just like so. Up the front, I'm going to place some half panels. And for this front section, we're going to use some half layers in order to make it look like it's got some sloping coming from the underside here. We can't place layers here because that's going to interfere with the turret ship that's actually colliding there. So we want to use copycat boards, which have no collision. And we're going to make those a bit taller. And then for the sides, I'm going to grab this copycat panel here, and we are going to use half panels and full panels on the side. Going to put some layers up here to make it look like there are some hatches up here, even though there aren't. And finally, we'll add some more layers up the front end just to make that look like it's sticking out a little bit. To finish it off, I'm going to decorate it with some steel blocks. I'm going to use the rules for Tiny Tussle as a guide to put this together. You can only use 8 hard armor blocks in your Tiny Tussle tank if you are going to go by our house rules. So I usually put most of mine up the front. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and what else are we going to have? We'll have 7, 8. That works. And the rest needs to be steel. It doesn't have to be steel, it just needs to be below the toughness of hard armor. And of course we can have some little touch-ups such as some industrial iron on the back for ventilation. We can use some vertical slices in order to make ourselves an antenna. We could even mix up the block palette over here, use some double steel armor. We could even use my favorite copycat bites and brackets to make some smoke launchers. You may be wondering where you're meant to sit in this tank. That is a good question. You can also find space within the turret in order to put a seat. What we could do is try to rearrange the turret a little. So if we got rid of this and had it all come together like that, put our smart chute on top of our arm, we can actually just change where the energy transmitter is. So we can put our seat over here, and then we can have our energy transmitter up this end. Then we can replace our hopper and our depot. And there we go. This should work just like before. So this tank on its own is pretty small, but we can go smaller. So this is technically a 2-wide transmission. However, we do need to put a 3-wide turret traverse system on top. I will explain that one in a second. For this one, it works quite a bit differently from our original 3-wide transmission, and I will go through this piece by piece for you. By the way, don't mind the fact that a lot of things just disappeared from the set. This thing was lagging a bunch, so, you know, gotta love this mod pack, right? Now we're going to start off with our gearbox, and we're going to place our inverted gear shifts. Now, depending on which way your tank is facing, you will either need inverted gear shifts or normal gear shifts. Unfortunately, it's just going to be a fact of trial and error as to which ones you'll need. So if things aren't working properly, just replace the inverted gear shifts with normal ones. We're going to place an inverted clutch here, and then we are going to place a cogwheel here, and we will place down our modular diesel engine. We're going to place an energy transmitter on this side. I'm going to call it 4-wide tank. And now I'm going to place down my fluid pipes. I'm going to place my mechanical pump and my fluid tank. So believe it or not, that is basically the main part of the transmission done. We are now going to quickly grab redstone link like that because I'm lazy. We're going to put a link on top of the inverted clutch. This will be our forwards. Then for reverse, we're going to have a link here on our inverted gear shift and a link here on top of our fluid tank. So this tank is getting hard powered and that's powering the clutch. So both of these links will be the same channel. They will fire simultaneously when told to do so. We're going to do something similar with this back gear shift. and we're going to put a link underneath our clutch. These two links, this one and this one, will be on the same channel, so those will fire simultaneously. And then we will have a final link right here. So what this is doing is it's hard powering the fluid tank, which is powering the clutch, and it's also soft powering the gear shifts, both of them. And that will be how our tank will turn in the other direction. I'm going to quickly set the channels on all of these. Our forwards, our reverse, our right, both of them are the same, and then our left, which our left will be this singular redstone link. Then we can grab a diesel bucket and fill this up. In your case, you would want to skim this up and then assemble the copy of it through a schematic, just like we did with the 3-wide. But with this one, I'm just going to put all of its suspension in place. And once all of this is in place, I'm just going to assemble it just like this. This is out of pure laziness. Do not do this. Now, there is a pretty important part of this tank that is currently missing, and that important part that is missing is the traverse. So we're going to build that real quick. I'm going to have 3 cogwheels up the back, and we are going to have a redstone resistor and an energy transmitter. This energy transmitter will be connected to this transmitter down here. We are going to 4-wide tank, that works. Now we're going to have our inverted clutches and our gear shifts. So this part is powering these. We're going to have a second energy transmitter. This is going to be set to a separate channel. So this is on channel 10, this is on channel 9, and we're going to have our physics bearing right here. We're going to place our redstone links all underneath. We want to encase our cogwheels, so we can then hard power these cogwheels so that they are powering the inverted clutch. Now we want to encode all of the channels for this. I'm just using the blocks I have on hand, plus these jungle planks, because why not? Finally, we'll have our analog lever down here and turn that up so that our turret traverse isn't too fast and overstressing the engine, which the engine will be a lot more prone to overstress since it's only a modular engine this time. Now, in order to get this onto this, we are going to quickly grab a Eureka ship helm, assemble this. Again, don't do this, assemble it using schematics instead, just like we did with the 5-wide. In this case, I'm doing it like this because, as I said, lazy. And what we can do is we can set this on top. And, yep, perfect. I'm kidding. So what we want to do now is we want to grab some blocks here, and we want to build out a place for our internals to sit, nice and snug. I'm placing these blocks on the chassis, which is what I'm going to call this for now, and they are holding the turret traverse in place. Now it can slide out the back here, so I'm going to make sure that it cannot do that. Something else that you're probably already noticing is the fact that it's very back heavy now, which is not ideal. So what we're going to do is we are going to grab the crack toolkit and we're going to up the stiffness a bunch. Another problem we are encountering right now is the tank is very tall. So we want to grab our suspension controller, make sure it's facing up and down, not left and right, not back and front, up and down. We want it to face up and down. So we want to grab our crank and we're going to shift and hold right click until our tank is at the desired height. And I'm going to go for just a little bit longer. That's looking a lot better. So this tank is a little bit unconventional in a few ways. One being how small it is, and the other being its overall shape. So you won't be able to build every single tank you want with this setup, unfortunately, but there are quite a few tanks that you can build that will look good in this scale, one of which is a Stuart. So I've actually built a Stuart here, which you can see. You may be wondering, how do we make the turret for that? Well, now's a good time to talk about autocannons. Now you're probably already realizing that this autocannon isn't actually facing the correct direction. Now, of course, this isn't south the way I'm facing right now because I messed up, but just ignore that for a second. Pretend that is south. So if this autocannon was facing this way, then it would be the correct direction, but it's not. It's facing off to the east, which is wrong, is what you might think, but it's actually facing the right direction. So when we paste this in, this autocannon is going to be facing south, which means that the entire setup is going to be 1 block wide only. To quickly show you how this would work, we're going to go into our F3 menu. We're going to find east and south. So this is the way that the cannon would be facing when we place it. So we don't want it to face that way. We want it to face east, and we're going to build it out like normal. And we are going to place the cannon mount here. We're going to put a lever right here, put our redstone link for firing it down, and I'm just going to encode it randomly. And we can put our energy transmitter in here for the pitch. I'm going to set it to 9 or wide tank. Now what we can do is we can start to assemble this turret. So we can assemble our physics bearing here. I'm going to destroy this slab here, and I'm going to grab my wrench, and I'm going to wrench this until it is lined up with the gear shift. Now I'm going to build out like this from the turret ship, and something like this. And now I'm going to make my schematic of this autocannon. I'm going to make a separate ship for this to sit on. Press assemble there. And then I'm going to print that. And as you can see, it's printed just like we wanted. It is now 1 block wide. We can now carefully sit this in place in our turret, just like so. Perfect. We can now make our tank look nicer, so we're going to build this up. If we really wanted to make this look sort of like a Stuart, we could replace these back sprockets with these giant sprockets, and we can replace these front ones with some mediums. And we can also mess around with the arrangement of the suspension wheels here. In order to make these pipes not look so glaring from the front, we can encase them in some copper casing. So that looks better now. We can use some boards in order to hide some of our internals. Might replace this front bit with stairs. Place these with layers so we can do a little bit of shaping. And we just want to fix up the forwards tilt of this, so I'm going to lower it down a bit more. Or maybe what it needs is to be raised up, perhaps. Here we go. There we go. And we can decorate it in a similar fashion to the previous tank. So I'm going to grab some hard armor for the front. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now we can fill the rest in with steel. We'll probably make this just a little bit wider. If you want to, you can also add other little bits and pieces, such as antennas and hatches and vents and bags, and really pretty this thing up. For me, I think I'm going to leave it with the shaping. But yeah, that's how you can make a little Stuart-esque tank that is only 4 blocks wide. But yeah, this is probably the smallest that you can get without compromising. So, without further ado, let's get way too small. So here we are at way too small. This transmission is so small you could probably just understand it from looking at a cross section. It is one, well, technically two, but basically 1 block wide, transmission-wise. Unfortunately, it uses a creative motor, so you won't be using this in any official Tank Tussle events. However, a 3 block wide tank is a fun little addition to have in your collection. So this transmission has a few little tricks up its sleeve, so we're going to go through it block by block as per usual. I'm going to need this sprocket here as well. So we're actually going to start off with placing the track down, like so, and we are going to place a cogwheel here. I'm going to yoink an andesite casing and encase the cogwheel. So you can see that this cogwheel has only opened up on one side. This is because we encased it while it was only attached to the sprocket track. So this means that if we were to power this cog, it would only power the sprocket on this side, but not on this side, because it's covered up on this side. Now, if you want to cover or uncover parts of an encased cogwheel, then you can simply right-click any part of it. Continuing on, we're going to place down another cogwheel, and then we're going to place down 2 more in an L shape. This is going to get back around to the gantry carriage, and in order to place the gantry carriage, we need a shaft down here, which is going to be facing forwards, and we're going to place the gantry on top, making sure that the openings of the gantry is going straight into these cogs here. Next, we want a gear shift, and we're going to place the gear shift right here, and that's going to be between the gantry shaft and the creative motor. We can set that to something a little bit better, like 128. So the way this works is the gantry is our clutch. So when we power the gantry shaft, it will start putting its power through to the gantry itself, and that will power these cogs, and it will power the tracks here. So to get a gist of what that would look like, we're going to hard power this encased cogwheel, and everything is in motion. Next, we're going to have a gear shift up the front, and this gear shift is between the 2 front sprockets. So when we power the gantry, it's going to power the right track, and that right track is going to both act as a track and a belt. So it's going to transfer power into this gear shift here, which will then get power to the left track. This is the reason why it is important for this gear here to only be opened up on the right side, or vice versa, because if it's powering both of these, basically the gear shift will just break if you try to turn. So yeah, make sure that your gear is only outputting to one side. Doesn't matter what side it is, all that matters is it isn't powering both, it only powers one. So if we were to follow this through real quick, we have the gantry acting as a clutch here, so if we were to power it, then everything's in motion. Both tracks are powered because the right track is being powered by the gantry directly, and the left track is being powered by the right track. Now, if we reverse all of this, we're going backwards. If we reverse this gear shift alone, then the right track is going forward, and this is reversing the power going through to the left track, so now the left track's going backwards. And if we power both of these gear shifts at once, Now the right track is going backwards and the left track is going forwards. So for all of this to work seamlessly, I'm going to have this link as our clutch. It's not really our forwards as per se. It's more so just a let power through to the wheels button. Then I'm going to have our reverse be this one. Then we can have our left, and we can have our right, which will be powering both of these links, this one here and this one here as well. Which I'm just realizing that's overlapping with that. We don't want that. Now let's quickly and lazily assemble this to test out whether it works or not. Grab our tweaked controller. This goes forwards. So we can go forwards, we can go left, we can go right, and we can go backwards. Ah, it's because of the way that the linked controller actually works. I'm going to grab a normal one instead, and we're going to try that again. Make sure to avoid doing this with the joystick on the linked controller, because you won't be able to go backwards, because that's a unfortunate little side effect. But there we go. Now, here is the problem, getting this to be more than just a three-wide track base. So there are ways that we could get about this. One way, of course, is to just slap a cannon on this and call it a casemate. But if you wanted this to actually have a rotating turret, we could go ahead and grab a physics bearing like so, place it down, and then we could put a temp block on top, power it. Already this tank is a little bit silly looking with how tall it is, but don't mind that. I'm going to get a wrench and we're going to turn this upside down, actually. And then what we can do is grab a valve, and we can use the valve to turn, except it doesn't want to turn. Probably fix that with the slab. There we go, we're turning. We're going to turn that down a little bit. And we can turn our turret manually using this valve handle. You may be wondering, how would you go about pitch for these? So you'd actually want to do something a little bit like this. So we've got a cannon that's assembled here, and we can still reach the breech. It is a little bit tricky. If we just... There we go. You can still reach the breech, even if it can be a little bit finicky. And in order to fire, we can flick this lever. It doesn't have anything in it right now, so... But we have this redstone resistor inside of the breech, along with an analog lever, and we've got the crank on the side, so we can also pitch the cannon manually. Again, not ideal. This looks very silly. This does not look correct, but this is what we're going with. You could probably put this fizz bearing down where this andesite casing is, and then migrate this redstone link to here, perhaps. Then you would also have quite a forwards turret, which would also be a little bit different looking. But again, making a fully motorized tank this small is quite difficult. Notice that I said motorized. You can always go for the route of complete anarchy and use nothing but hand cranks to run this tank around, so you would be going full manual. Even the tracks would be powered by your hands. This would obviously look a lot better as a casemate. I'll just quickly show what it would look like as a casemate. So yeah, this is what it would look like as a casemate. As you can see, it looks a lot nicer, but it's also still very impractical. Quite small, but impractical. As far as tiny tanks go, that is about it for the entry-level stuff. These tanks aren't going to be winning any awards for looking the best or running the best, but they certainly are quite small and a good starting point for anyone who wants to get into tiny tanks like these. If you did find this helpful, then make sure to subscribe to the channel, as I'm going to have more videos just like this in the works. If you did like this video, please do like it. If you think anyone else could benefit from this video, share it with them. And if you plan on sticking around, I hope to see you in the next video. See ya!